Good morning and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to do a little Kokedama inspired piece for #1 Bruton. So I've got my Japanese snips from Newbery, but also a trowel. What on earth could I need a trowel for if I'm doing floristry? You may well ask. Right, please do subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. And if any of the tips and tricks I give you along the way are useful, you can always buy me a coffee. The link to coffee buying is in the blurb to all my clips. Or better still, join the club where we have a whole community growing and enjoying time together. That sounds quite weird, but there's loads of stuff going on in the club, so come and join in. Right, Kokedama time with trowel and snips. So Kokedama is a very simple kind of floristry. It's not really floristry, it's more like sort of indoor planting. And so today what I'm going to do, and traditionally what you do is you have a little bit of plant and then you wrap it in moss and have it sort of, so it looks like a miniature garden. You're making miniature gardens, which you can have inside. So I'm going to make a miniature garden for #1 Bruton, but I'm going to use, obviously, twiggery pokery. It's February the 1st. Hooray. So I'm going to be cutting some twiggery pokery to go with it. I need some moss and I'm thinking a clump of snowdrops, which afterwards, of course, can be planted back in the garden. You don't waste them. I love this. It's a very charming way to use material and then not waste it. It doesn't go on the compost heap, it goes on back into the garden. So some snowdrops, and I'll see what else I can find in the garden. There may be some other tiny little people I can dig up. And I'm going to make a little sort of miniature garden-scape for the old, for #1 Bruton, which is a very fancy hotel in Bruton. No, it's not that fancy. It's a very, very nice boutique hotel. And if ever you wanted a mini break in Bruton, I would recommend it very highly. Not just because they're my customers, but they're also my friends. And very nice people too, and the hotel's lovely. Anyway, enough, on we go. If you're looking for moss to harvest to make a floral project, then a mossy path is a good thing to keep in a garden. If you've got space, just have a patch that you can use from time to time. You can tell where I've been before. There, where I've taken some before. And from time to time, I come on a project. Look, I've taken some from there as well. But I don't ever use that much, and you probably won't either. If you're lucky, hello? If you're lucky, the moss will just roll up in your hand. Can you see what I'm doing? Ideally, you want to find a place where it's quite loose and it just comes up very easily. The green, as a rule, the greener the moss and the more cushiony it looks, the easier it will be to lift. So I'm just getting little, hello, I'm just getting little strips of it, which I can use for my Kokedama. So this was a wild and wooded area, but we've had to clear it because the dry summer we had last summer meant that the house was falling down. We will be replanting all these trees, of course. We would never cut down a lot of trees and then not make sure that twice as many had gone back up. But a side bonus of this process is that I can see my bank of snowdrops really clearly for the first time in years. So I'm going to dig a few of these up for my Kokedama inspired garden arrangement. I don't need many. These will do, and that's what I needed my trowel for. So I've got a rather unprepossessing looking bucket full of bits and pieces, and I'm going to now show you the sort of the trad Kokedama type thing. And then I'm going to show you the Georgie's take on a sort of Japanesey, garden-y, Kokedama-ish inspired-y sort of thing. And the thing about floristry is the point of the exercise is you have a nice time, and it's not really about following, I don't think it's about following rules. It's about making something beautiful, which gives you enormous pleasure. So I'm taking my Kokedama idea as a starting point only. Plus, also, I don't have the self-restraint necessary for pure, chic, beautiful, exquisite, that kind of Japanese floristry, which is, when I see it, I think, oh, how fabulous, how gorgeous, and then I really struggle. But I have been picking up little bits and pieces as I went around the garden. So a bit of lichen, always useful. I've got some highly scented Saka Coca Christmas box. Mine is very, very small. I planted it years ago in the wrong place and it's not especially happy. But nevertheless, it is flowering. Those little tiny white flowers have a scent that has to be believed, to be smelled, to be believed. I've got some variegated ivy, a tiny little bit which was left on the wall in the garden that has been stripped of its apple trees and all the nice things. Anyway, traditionally, what would happen with my Kokedama is I'd have a little bunch of something like this and I would wrap it in moss so that, look how pretty that makes it, so that you quite quickly have a little miniature garden. And what people do is they tie this up, they make sure that there's moss on the bottom, and they would tie it, and you'd have, taking out the twigs, tie it up into a sort of ball of snowdrops, and often people suspend them from the ceiling. They're very beautiful, hanging against a beautiful wall, or they have them going down a table. You can have 3 or 4 of them if you're having people to dinner. It's a very beautiful thing. If you're going to put them on a table, having made a moss ball like this, do put a tiny little something underneath so they don't stain the good double damask, or make a damp patch on the table. But you can see how pretty. And you would tuck moss in the top just to make it into a proper moss ball, which you can then hang. I'm going to do something slightly different, because I was thinking about doing hanging balls of Kokedama for number 1 Bruton, but of course I don't want to drill holes into their mantelpiece, their drawing room, or hang Kokedama from their beautiful wall lights in case they don't like that. My commission is to make a piece of floristry to go on that little round table by their fireplace every week. So I'm going to do that, but it is slightly inspired by this whole idea. And the way I'm going to do it is I've got a French, muddy hands, I've got a French soupière. I love a soupière, very beautiful, nice, simple, clean lines. This is a modern one, but if you look out at, brocante and second-hand places, sometimes you can find them, and I have a few older ones which I do love to use. But I'm going to use this one this time because the older one, it's got the one that's handy, I'll show you, has this is a French soupière. Fabrizio used to deal in antiques, and he used to go to France and buy French antiques. So this is one of his collection, and it makes a really lovely piece to do floristry in. But the Kokedama thing, I think, has got to be very, very clean and simple colours and everything. So I'm not going to use this because even though this is quite a clean, simple blue design, it is quite sort of Victorian looking, and it's another story. It's a different story. I think if you have time to think about it, when you're doing floristry, you're always telling a story. Right, I've got a few more bits to get ready, and then I'll show you how I'm going to do this. Exciting. So what I've done is I was going to put this dish inside the bowl and create my garden on top of it. But actually, I don't need to. This is where you can assume things and then you have to readjust the idea as you go along. But I don't need it because I think if I put look, I've tied my moss onto my little thing of snowdrops, and I can pull down the moss and hide it, but it's too high up. It's not pretty enough. I don't like it. I want something sort of more sitting downy. So I'm going to take this out and put it to one side. I have tied the moss round. Can you see? I've tied the moss round with raffia. I'm just going to snip it off. And I'm going to pop this in the middle of my little arrangement. And then I'm going to backfill with moss all the way around. Making a miniature garden. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, as part of the Easter festivities, we would all go up to the village church and be part of a team that made a Garden of Gethsemane in the church. And we would make a little hill and we'd have gravel paths and there'd be a little pile of folded up bandages to pretend to be the cloths that were left behind and all of that. And when I started being a flower farmer and a florist, and people said, what makes you think you can do this? Why do you want to do it? And I thought, I have spent my life making miniature gardens, and I'm now going to turn it into my job. And so here I am, aged 55, making a miniature garden still, and it's not even Lent. Anyway, so that's nicely, and the moss is lovely and damp because I've just picked it up out of the garden, and I could just leave it like that. And you can always dig up your snowdrops and pot them up and have them around while they flower. You can bring them into the house like this and they really won't mind. I've got mud everywhere, so get rid of the mud. And they really won't mind. They'll flower for you and they're very, very pretty. And that can be a little kind of miniature indoor garden for you. But, because I always go for the kind of large and exciting thing, I thought I would add material. So I make sort of miniature trees in a sort of bonsai-ish sort of way. And I even have a stone, because all good Japanese gardens are much, much more restrained than anything I'm any good at. So this is representing restraint, and it even has a little moss on it. This isn't a pebble garden, so I haven't got pebbles. This is Somerset stones. This is a chip of Somerset stone. And I'm going to rearrange my snowdrops around a bit. You're going to be the front. You guys at the front. And so I'm going to put my stone to represent the thoughtful calm of a perfect Japanese garden. And then to keep on the Japanese feel, I love in Japanese gardens And I love bonsai. This is actually Scots pine, but isn't it shapely and attractive? So I'm going to have a little bonsai Scots pine arrangement, and I can tuck it into the moss. I'm always doing back to front arrangements. So I'll see what it looks like when I finish. And because I like to do things in threes, I have got 3. And the good Japanese florist would have 1 maximum, or possibly 2 or maybe 3 ingredients in this whole arrangement. And I've gone for quite a lot. But I like a sort of, I don't know, I like things to look as though they're falling over the edge. I like things to look very alive and slightly wild, which is, if you've looked at my garden, how the garden looks. And here we've got some, I'm really going for some height. Afterwards I'll show you when it's finished and you'll see, hopefully I'll have a nice combination. And of course, at this time of year, I cut some hazel. So I'm going to have a little hazel. Snowdrops like to grow out of the feet of hazels. So my miniature garden has, it's as though it's a little hazel, clump of hazel, coppiced hazel, regrowing out of the ground. And I've got, of course, some catkins. You've got to be firm. And I also got, because I wanted height and delicacy, this is a hornbeam, which grows very well for us here. And I'm going to leave the dried leaves on it because it's real. It's part of the story in my miniature garden. So we're going to have height. I don't want everything falling over, so I've got to really jam it in. And again, everything is coppiced in my little miniature wood. So 3 of everything. I had got out my little Newbery flower frogs because I thought I would need them, but actually the moss is strong enough and doing all the work for me. Here, very pretty silvery brachyglottis. I'm always telling people to grow brachyglottis. And so there's my little garden coming along. So I'm going to have brachyglottis here at the front, like as though it is a little shrub. If it were a Japanese garden, it might have a small mound of very, very beautifully manicured shrub action. So here's my small mound of beautifully manicured shrub. And let's not forget the sarcococca, because the scent of the snowdrops is very, very delicate. If you smell snowdrops, they do have a lovely, very slightly sweet scent, but sarcococca is a great deal more obvious. So we're going to have the sarcococca behind the stone. Tuck that in. I don't want to cover up the snowdrops. And then I thought this lovely piece of curly variegated ivy, you can see where it joined up with the ground here. So I'm going to join it up, I'm going to plug it in, but then I'm going to swirl it around my pot to frame my arrangement. And I'm going to tuck it in No, I'm not going to tuck it in. I'm going to leave it. So when I get to number 1 Bruton and pop it on the table, I'll just arrange it. And then it's coming along. Oh, sweet. The snowdrops will relax a bit. They're feeling like they've just been dug up. And I'm going to put, along with my little stone, this is too big, so I'm going to cut it down a bit and just arrange it. Along the foot of the stone. And the silver is a slightly different colour to the green. I'll show you in a sec. And I can pull off other bits of lichen or cut sharply into it. And tuck them in. Don't like the end of this, I'm going to take it off. Oh yes, my friend Saskia Marjoram, who makes flower essences and lives in the village here. She has a whole arrangement of small succulents and pieces of lichen like this in her house. And every time I go there, I'm sort of wowed by it. It's very nice to have, it's really very kind of calming to make something like this. So there we have our snowdrops just coming out. What I am also going to do is I'm going to give it a little bit of water because it's going into a warm room, and while all of these have got their feet in the moss, which will give them a bit of a reservoir of water, I'm actually going to pour a little tiny bit in. And in life, if you can have in your possession a small watering can with a long nozzle, it's extremely useful. So I'm just going to pour it in so that everybody's got a bit of water. And then I'll put it on its little showy stand and we'll have a look at it. Right, let's have a look. And there it is, all finished. A little, not at all Kokedama, but the Kokedama is deep inside it, but a tiny little Japanese inspired garden for a winter arrangement in a house. If you've got some spring bulbs just poking their heads up and a bit of moss and some nice twiggery pokery, have a go. Have a go. You might find you make something you really like. So there we are. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I'll see you soon.